I'm Maya. I'm 29 years old, and 8 months ago, my life looked perfect from the outside. I had a beautiful home in Phoenix, Arizona, a husband named Derek, who I'd been with for 6 years, and I was 7 months pregnant with our first baby. We painted the nursery yellow. We'd argued over names for weeks. I had a registry, a birth plan, and a best friend named Jess who'd been planning my baby shower for 2 months straight. Everything felt right. Everything felt safe. And I was so stupid for believing that. The shower was on a Saturday afternoon at my mother-in-law Patricia's house. Her idea, not mine. I should have caught that. Patricia never wanted to host anything for me. In 6 years, she'd made it clear in 100 small ways that I wasn't good enough for her son. The looks she gave me at family dinners, the comments about my job, my background, my family. Derek always said I was reading too much into it. He'd squeeze my hand under the table and whisper, "She's just like that." And I'd swallow everything and smile. That's what I did. I smiled and I swallowed and I kept the peace. Because I loved him. Because I thought that's what you do when you love someone. 30 women showed up to that shower. My mom was there. My sister Carrie was there. My coworkers, my college friends, Jess in her little pink dress running around making sure everything was perfect. The living room was full of balloons and flowers and little sandwiches cut into triangles. It looked like something out of a magazine. Patricia had gone all out. And I remember thinking maybe I was wrong about her. Maybe this was her way of finally letting me in. We were halfway through the gift opening when Patricia walked in from the kitchen. She wasn't carrying a gift. She was carrying a manila envelope, and she had this look on her face that I will never forget for as long as I live. It wasn't nervous. It wasn't uncertain. It was rehearsed. It was satisfied. She walked right into the middle of that room, right in front of 30 women, right in front of my mother. And she held that envelope out to me and she said, "Maya, I think it's time we address something as a family." And just like that, the whole room went quiet. I looked at Derek. He was standing by the doorway. He wouldn't look at me. And that's when I felt it. That cold, sinking feeling that starts in your chest and drops straight to your stomach. I didn't take the envelope right away. I just stared at him. He was looking at the floor. 30 women were watching me, and my husband was looking at the floor. Patricia set the envelope on the gift table in front of me, right on top of a box wrapped in yellow paper, and she said, "We had a private paternity test done. We know my son isn't the father of that baby." And then she smiled. She actually smiled. And she said, "We thought you should know we know before you try to pass this off any further." I heard someone gasp. I think it was Jess. I heard my mom say, "What in the world?" I heard murmuring, shifting, that awful uncomfortable silence that happens when something unspeakable gets said out loud in a room full of people and no one knows where to look. And Derek, my husband of 4 years, the man who held my hand at every ultrasound, the man who cried the first time we heard the heartbeat, the man who painted that nursery yellow with me on a Sunday afternoon in March. He walked to the back bedroom. And he came out with a bag, a packed bag. And his family, his 2 brothers, and his aunt who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, they started nodding. His aunt actually said, "It's the right thing, Derek." I did not cry. I want you to understand that. I sat in that chair with 30 women watching me, and I did not cry. I didn't scream. I didn't defend myself. I looked at that envelope and I looked at my husband, and I made a decision in that moment so quiet and so certain that nobody in that room could have seen it on my face. I picked up the envelope. I set it aside and I said, "Okay, just that." Okay. Patricia looked confused. She expected tears. She expected begging. She expected me to fall apart in front of everyone she'd invited to watch. What she didn't know was that 2 weeks earlier, I had found something. And I had been very, very careful about what I did with it. I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and walked over to the television. And I said, "Before anyone leaves, there's something I want everyone to see. If you think you know where this is going, I promise you, you don't. Stay with me. I need to take you back 2 weeks before that shower, because that's where everything actually started to unravel, and not for me. For them. I just didn't know it yet. It was a Thursday night, and Derek told me he was going to his buddy Marcus's place to watch the game. Normal. He did that most Thursdays. I was tired, I was 7 months pregnant, my back hurt, and I was in bed by 9. But around 10:30, I woke up thirsty and I went downstairs to the kitchen, and I noticed Derek's laptop was open on the counter. He'd left it on. The screen hadn't gone dark yet, and I wasn't snooping. I want to be clear about that. I was just standing there in my kitchen in the dark drinking a glass of water, and the screen was right there, and I saw a name I recognized. Patricia. And I saw the words, "She still doesn't know anything." I set my glass down. I stood very still. And then I read the rest of it. It was an email chain between Derek and Patricia, going back 4 months. 4 months of planning. 4 months of coordinating. 4 months of the two of them building something together that was designed to destroy me. The paternity test mentioned in those emails wasn't random. It wasn't even real concern. It was a strategy. Patricia had convinced Derek that if he could get me out of the marriage before the baby came, he could avoid a long custody battle. She'd done research. She'd actually consulted someone. The plan was to humiliate me publicly. At the shower, she insisted on hosting in front of as many witnesses as possible, so that when I fell apart, when I cried and screamed and made a scene, they'd have people who saw it. They'd use it to paint me unstable, unfit. And Derek, sweet, quiet Derek who cried at our baby's heartbeat, had written back, "Yeah, that makes sense. Let's do it at the shower." I stood in that kitchen for a long time. I didn't wake Derek up. I didn't call my sister. I went back upstairs. I laid down next to my husband, and I stared at the ceiling, and I thought very clearly and very carefully about what I was going to do. Because here's what they didn't know about me. Before I became a stay-at-home wife supporting Derek's career, I spent 3 years working as a legal administrative assistant for a family law firm in Scottsdale. I knew exactly what documentation meant. I knew exactly what a paper trail was worth, and I knew that the worst thing I could do in that moment was react, so I didn't. The next morning, I made Derek breakfast, and I kissed him goodbye, and I smiled and I said, "Don't forget the showers in 2 weeks. Your mom needs you there by noon." And he smiled back and said, "I'll be there." And I watched him drive away, and I went straight to my phone and I called my old boss, a family law attorney named Sandra Chen, and I told her everything. Sandra didn't panic. Sandra said, "Maya, don't touch that laptop. Don't change your behavior, and get me everything you can without him knowing." And that's exactly what I did. Over the next 2 weeks, I documented everything. I photographed every email on that screen from a separate device. I kept a written log with dates and times. I called my OB and got a legitimate paternity confirmation done through my doctor, legal and documented, which confirmed what I already knew because I had never once been unfaithful to that man. Not once. Not ever. Sandra filed paperwork I won't name here, but trust me, it mattered. And there was one more thing that I found on day 3 of quietly going through documents Derek had left in his home office, and a folder he clearly thought I'd never open. A recording. Derek and Patricia on a phone call. Derek had recorded it himself, probably as protection for himself, in case she ever turned on him, which honestly tells you everything you need to know about the kind of family this was. In that recording, Patricia said, word for word, "The baby is probably his. We both know that, but it doesn't matter. What matters is she can't prove it fast enough to stop the filing. The baby is probably his." She knew. She had always known. This was never about the truth. This was about getting rid of me cleanly and quietly before I had any legal standing as a mother in that family. I transferred that recording to a USB drive. I put the USB drive in my purse. And on the morning of the shower, I got dressed. I did my hair. I put on the little blue dress I'd bought for the occasion, and I drove to Patricia's house with a smile on my face that I had been practicing for 2 weeks. So when I walked over to that television in front of 30 women and my husband and his whole family, I wasn't scared. I wasn't shaking. I plugged in that USB drive and I looked at Patricia one time before I hit play, and I want to tell you the look on her face in that half second before the audio started was worth every single sleepless night. Her mouth opened just slightly, just enough, because she recognized what I was holding, and she knew exactly what was about to come out of those speakers. What happened next in that room, I am still not over. And I don't think anyone who was there that day will ever forget it either. Stay with me because we're almost there. I hit play, and Patricia's own voice filled that living room like a confession from the sky. Every single person in that room heard it. 30 women, Derek's brothers, his aunt, my mother, my sister Carrie, Jess in her pink dress standing by the food table with her hand over her mouth. Patricia's voice coming through those speakers was calm and calculated, and every word landed like a brick. The baby is probably his. We both know that, but it doesn't matter. What matters is she can't prove it fast enough to stop the filing. The recording ran for 4 minutes and 12 seconds. I know because I had listened to it so many times, I had memorized every pause, every word, every single moment where Derek said nothing and let his mother talk him into destroying me. 4 minutes and 12 seconds of silence in that room except for Patricia's voice, and then Derek's voice agreeing, and then nothing. I stopped the recording, and I looked up. Patricia had gone completely white, not embarrassed white, not caught off guard white, the kind of white that happens when a person realizes that the thing they built to hurt someone else just collapsed directly on top of them. Derek was still standing by the doorway with his packed bag, and he looked like a man who had just watched the floor disappear under his feet. His brothers weren't nodding anymore. His aunt had nothing to say. The 30 women in that room were absolutely silent, and then my mother stood up from her chair and said, "Maya, baby, come here," and I walked over to her and she put her arm around me, and that was the only moment I came close to losing it. Just that. Just my mom standing up. Jess was the first one to say something out loud. She pointed at Patricia and said, "You planned this. You planned this whole shower just to do this to her." And Patricia opened her mouth and nothing came out. Nothing. Because what do you say? What do you say when your own voice just said it for you in front of everyone you know? Derek took a step toward me and said, "Maya, let me explain." And I looked at him and I said, "Sandra Chen is already handling everything. You'll be hearing from her office by Monday." That was it. That was all I said. I didn't yell. I didn't list everything he'd done. I didn't perform my pain for the room. I just said her name. His lawyer would know that name. And I picked up my purse and I walked to the door. My mom and Carrie and Jess walked out with me. We sat in Jess's car in the driveway for a few minutes and nobody said anything, and then Jess started crying and I actually laughed a little because she always cried when I wouldn't, and that was the most normal thing that had happened all day. I stayed with my mom that night. I slept better than I had in months. Because there is something about having done the right thing quietly and completely that settles your nervous system in a way that nothing else can. I hadn't reacted. I hadn't begged. I hadn't given them the scene they needed. I had just waited and prepared and let the truth do what the truth does. When you give it enough room. Sandra filed for divorce and asset protection the following Monday morning. Because Derek and I had built a business together, a property management company that I had done the books for since the beginning, there was significant shared equity involved. Sandra was very good at her job. The documentation I had gathered, the emails, the recording, the timeline, the legitimate paternity confirmation from my OB, all of it painted a picture that no judge was going to ignore. Derek's attorney tried twice to challenge the paternity documentation, and both times Sandra shut it down clean. The divorce was finalized 5 months later. I walked away with half the business equity, full primary custody of my daughter, and a settlement that meant I would not have to worry about money while I rebuilt. My daughter was born 6 weeks after the shower. I named her Rose. She came into the world in a hospital room with my mom and Carrie and Jess there and nobody else, and it was the most peaceful thing I have ever experienced. Derek was listed on the birth certificate. He is her biological father. That was never a question regardless of what his mother tried to manufacture. And he does have supervised visitation now per the custody agreement. He has used it twice in 4 months. That tells you everything about the kind of father the plan to protect his inheritance made him into. Patricia has not spoken to me since the shower. I heard through Carrie that she told people the recording was edited. That is the thing about people like her. Even when they are caught completely, even when their own voice convicts them in front of everyone they know, they find a way to rewrite it in their heads. That is not my problem anymore. I spent 6 years making myself smaller so that women would accept me, and I will never do that again for anyone. I am sitting here right now in the yellow nursery that I painted with a man I thought loved me, and I am watching my daughter sleep, and I want you to hear this clearly. The moment I stopped trying to defend myself out loud and started building my case in silence was the moment everything changed. They counted on my fear. They counted on my chaos. They counted on me falling apart in that chair in front of 30 people because that is what they would have done. But I had learned something in 3 years of family law and 6 years of keeping my mouth shut at dinner tables. I had learned that the quietest people in the room are sometimes the most prepared. And I had been more prepared than any of them ever imagined. Rose is asleep. The room is yellow. And I have never in my life felt more like myself than I do right now.